Welcome to the latest episode of Branding the Experience, where we discuss ways where we can create environments where employees actually want to come to work and customers want to keep coming back. Hi, I'm Ken Bader, your host for Branding the Experience. I'm also the author of the book, The Formula for Business Success Equals B plus C plus S, a discussion on brand, culture, and strategy alignment. And our subject today is who's on first. And a few recent events have really brought that to mind. One from a personal standpoint, and one in the news lately about Travis Kalanick. I was just reading this in the New York Times about his resignation and his demise, all of which reminds me of one of the points that I always say is that culture will eat your brand for breakfast, your strategy for lunch, and much like Travis, there will be no dinner, at least not at Uber. But yeah, it reminds me of going back to who's on first, that we need to have, as I've said before in another article, one that I wrote a while back, is we need to adapt an employees first approach. If we're not concentrating on our employees to create an environment, more importantly, an experience both for other employees as well as our customers, members, or clients, we're going to have a real rough road in building the right B plus C plus S formula, as I always say. Going to Uber, for example, it's not a brand I use. I actually really love Lyft, and it's not because I had any bad experiences at Uber. I did try them a few times, but I will say that the experience with Lyft is much more consistent and much better in my opinion. There are a few things about Uber that I didn't like as much, which I won't go into. But another reason why I stopped using Uber at all and use Lyft 100% is because of all the news about Uber. We have to focus on our employees. We can't create an environment where sexual harassment is okay, or as the CEO, we're going to get videotaped, being belligerent with one of our independent contractors that are driving under our brand. Whether that driver is wrong or right, we've got to listen as the leader. It's definitely an example of very poor leadership that Uber, even with Kalanick gone, is going to have a real difficult time bouncing back from. But even on an everyday level, as you know, I work with a lot of service-based businesses, financial services, restaurants, pampering services, basically businesses where the experience and the service are just as or more important than the actual product. And so, in my travels, I travel to a lot of restaurants, work with restaurants, eat at restaurants, and a couple weeks ago was talking to one of the restaurant owners of a place that I go to from time to time. And he was talking about, how running a restaurant, or more importantly, how managing, not leading, how managing restaurant employees was so drastically different than any other business in the world. I don't know if I agree with it, but he talked about the fact that you only have temporary employees. They're not there as a career. They're using it as just a job or a stepping stone to something else. And he kind of went on a little bit of a rant. And the first thing I thought of was, well, maybe if you don't treat your employees like crap, maybe you would get more productivity out of them. Maybe if you actually involved them in the process and made them part of the experience and not just a plug and play in the experience that you're trying to provide, maybe you'd get a little bit more out of them and you wouldn't be so frustrated. I think that's the case at Uber as well. And that's why, when I talk about who's on first, I advocate an employees first approach. Now, a lot of people want to argue with me on that. Well, what do you mean? Yeah, customers number two. The customers and members and clients are the lifeblood of our business. Employees come and go, and that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that there is no stakeholder that is subservient to another. In other words, when I ask who's on first, we're all on first. Employees may be 1A, customers may be 1B, the community may be 1C, our partners and owners may be 1D, our board members, so forth. But there is no number two. Every single group of stakeholders is at the same level. No one is subservient to another. When we say, well, our employees are number two, customers are number one, what type of environment do you think that's going to create in terms of employees thinking, well, I'm not as important, I'm expendable, so, I'm not going to put 100% towards this job. But when you include your employees in the process, when you do make them one of all of the number one stakeholder groups that you serve, some great things happen. As the whole tagline of this show, as well as my business, creating environments where employees actually want to come to work and customers want to keep coming back. It's very difficult to have the second part of that phrase work when you don't have the first, when you don't have employees wanting to come to work, or at the very least, not dreading coming to work. I've had a number of actual employer jobs in my career, and I can count on one hand how many businesses, how many jobs that I didn't dread going there because of the environment, because of the leadership, wanting to manage and not lead and mentor. So who's on first? Everybody's on first. But one of the first stakeholders you need to get involved and you need to create an experience for are your employees. Because if they have a positive environment and they are part of what you're building, then you don't end up like our buddy Kalanick at Uber, and you also don't end up sitting at a restaurant or another business wondering why your customers aren't coming back. I'm Ken Bader, host of Branding the Experience, hoping that you're branding the experience at a very high level at your unique business. Take care.